Welcome to the All People podcast, where we talk all people all the time. I'm your host, Alysa Southall. My goal is to improve candidate and employee experiences as well as company cultures throughout U.S. employers. We do this by leading with empathy, diversity, inclusion, equality, teamwork, and transparency. Come on this journey with me. Welcome back to All People podcast, where we talk all people all the time. As always, I'm your host, Alysa Southall. And welcome back. I am solo this week, so I am doing that intentionally. I wanted to talk about job postings today. So I wanted to come on here solo and give you an update on job postings. Now, some of you may know I wrote an ebook that was published by Book Boom Learning called The Secret Formula to Hiring Talent, ... It's not so secret. And I covered on this job posting in a couple of the sections within that ebook. So I encourage you, the ebook is $8.99. You can go on and purchase it. And I'll drop the link in the show notes. But I wanted to talk with you a little bit more about job descriptions. And the reason for that is because a lot of employers right now are experiencing trouble finding talent. And oftentimes, one of the things I share is that sometimes when they're hiring talent, they're often in their own way in terms of hiring talent. And so think about that for a second. Maybe they have a 9-step interview process that is certainly not conducive to the job seekers in their population. Maybe there's a hiring manager who's looking for a candidate smorgasbord, right? We're waiting for the right candidate, and we're just going to hold out till we get them. Maybe they are looking for somebody that has all of the preferred qualifications, right, versus the required qualifications. And maybe they're looking to hire somebody, but they don't realize the things that they can train on. Or maybe the job description is outdated and the requirements of the job description were created by somebody that wasn't the new hiring manager or the new leaders of the organization. So I always recommend that when you're opening a new job, that you start off by having a meeting. That meeting should be with all of sort of the stakeholders of that role, right, at different levels. And again, I talk about this in the ebook, but that meeting should be with senior leaders that are going to be approving this posting. It's going to be with the hiring manager, with an employee from that department, with potentially a supervisor if it's a 2-step level down of that department, and HR. The CFO, the CEO, whoever is in the leadership team that needs to be involved. And the reason for that meeting is you're buying in. We're buying in to say, this is the role we're opening. This is why we feel these qualifications are needed. And we want to ensure that this role is okay to stay open and get hired for whenever that happens to be. Right? So we're getting buy-in from the initial start. Now, the employee who is going to end up being a colleague might not be present for the conversation that they have about pay and that kind of stuff, although they could be if your company is practicing pay transparency, right? So if we look at that, we're having that meeting and we say, okay, here's what the pay range is for the role. Here are what the expectations are for the role. We know that when we get an offer, now we don't have to come back to leadership and we don't have to ask for approval for that offer. I can't tell you the amount of companies I've worked in where we get approved for a particular range, and then we have to get approval to open the position at that range. Then we open the position at that range, we find the perfect candidate, right, after weeks or months of searching, and then we have to go back and get approval to hire that person, even if they're in the same range we initially discussed. That loses all this time that doesn't need to be lost while you risk losing the candidate that you're desperately in need of, or that you so desperately want to have as part of your organization. So a lot of the times, companies and their representatives are in their own way in terms of hiring talent. Job descriptions are a big piece of that. So think about the job descriptions that you've helped create in your company, or if you haven't created one in a long time, go and look up your company. Go and search them on Indeed and on LinkedIn and on their website. See what the job posting looks like. And I encourage CEOs particularly to do this. Understand what your process looks like to get in the door. Here's why I recommend this. If your job description is boring you, if the job description for a job in your organization is boring you to read, or you're only reading bits and pieces because it's so long that it's dreadful, your applicants feel the same way. I would say go one step further. Your senior leaders should be pretending to apply to your positions, or even applying. As a CEO, go through and apply to an open position in your organization. How much work is it? Do I have to upload my resume? And then on top of uploading my resume, input everything that I uploaded from my resume? As a candidate, if I have to go through that experience, I'm like, no, like this is so antiquated. I don't even want to be part of your organization because you probably have everything else internally that's this antiquated, right? So it's putting me off before I even get a chance to hear more. So leaders, go through your application process. Is it frustrating? Is it extremely time consuming? Is it more hassle than it's worth? Do you want to read the posting? Is it engaging? And the answers here are, if these things aren't true for you and you're an internal member of your organization, they're probably not going to be true for somebody who is external and doesn't know your culture and the way your business runs. So when we look at those job descriptions, are they too lengthy, right? And so let's flip this on the other side. So rather than posting your job description in its entirety, where you're going to see it's going to be boring, it's going to be boring and long, create a way for it to be concise and whimsical. If you don't think that this process of making it concise and whimsical will work, then consider the last resume that you reviewed. Did you read the whole thing in its entirety? Or did you skim through and pull out the parts that you wanted to know? Was it boring to scour over the long pieces of text? Or were you happy that the job seeker organized that resume into bullet points so that it helped you to focus on what their skills and abilities were? Make your job advertisement concise and memorable. When you post it on those channels, make sure you put it in the right categories, right? I can't tell you how many job postings I've seen on LinkedIn that say entry level for the category that they're posted in, yet they require 5 to 7 years of experience. And y'all, if you don't know this yet, 5 to 7 years of experience is not an entry-level position, so get it out of the entry-level grouping. 5 to 7 years of experience is a mid to senior level person. Again, make sure you're choosing the right box. And I'm not saying when we look at whimsical that you have to make it this, super elaborate and creatively written thing. Not everybody is like that. Not every culture is like that. But what I'm encouraging you to do is find a way to show your culture through the job description. If you're a culture that is sort of laid back, how are you going to portray that through that job posting? And I'm a firm believer that your job advertisement should not be a job posting, right? Your job advertisement, should not be a job description. There's a difference, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, your job description should be the job description. The job posting should be different. You can put a link in the job posting to your job description, but it should not be the same. So for example, you could set the expectations by saying, here's what the process looks like. Here are the qualifications we're looking for. And then attached, please find our long form job description. You could totally write it like that. So that's the first thing I'll say. I also will say your job posting should help you set expectations early. So what do I mean by that? Well, have you ever been given the pieces of a puzzle and been asked to put them together without looking at the picture of the box or the picture of the puzzle that you're making? Have you ever been given a deck of cards, then asked to play a game and nobody's told you the rules, so you're unfamiliar with how to play? This is often what job seekers feel like when they're applying to your roles. They're applying and maneuvering through your job process, through your hiring process. They're going through endless pieces of this process of applying without feedback, consistently being rejected, and with no understanding as to why. They're navigating through complex and lengthy hiring processes and having to negotiate offers, which can be physically and mentally exhausting. This whole process is like a full-time job for a job seeker. It can become discouraging for job seekers and make them want to give up or apply for something totally different that maybe makes them unhappy or doesn't fulfill them, which in turn doesn't help you. So when you post a position, preferably a job advertisement, as we discussed, and not your full-length job description, include some information that will help the job seeker feel more confident about your process before they ever have a chance to talk to someone in your organization. Let me give you an example. And this example is the one from my book. Say you're hiring a customer service representative. Your qualifications would say qualities being sought, strong communication skills, ability to problem solve, experience with conflict resolution, experience interacting with customers. Underneath of that, it will say hiring process, application with parsed resume, phone interview with recruiter, interview with hiring manager, interview with team members, likely the same day. If you can be that specific in your expectations, right? Maybe you can't. Manager likes to see resumes that include examples of customer support and example of conflict resolution. Candidates are encouraged to come to interviews with verbal examples of qualities being sought. So what does that do? It prepares the candidate to say, that qualities being sought section, the manager is looking for me to provide verbal examples of how I've done these things. I also know that the manager likes to see resumes or see examples of ways in which I've provided customer support and conflict resolution as their top priority. There's no point in setting up an applicant to fail the process. So I've been a part of hiring teams where the hiring manager's like, they couldn't answer my question. Or I asked them a question like, are you a team player? Well, of course they're going to tell you yes, but what is more effective? Give me an example of a time when you've worked well as a team. But more importantly, going back to that example, why are we trying to set people up for failure by not preparing them for what that hiring manager is looking for? We treat it like we, collective employers, right, treat it like a game. When I hire them into my organization, we are not going to say, here are all the notes. I mean, we're going to send you to a meeting, but we're not telling you who's in the meeting, and we're not telling you what the meeting's about or how to prepare, right? That doesn't happen when you get in your organization. Sure, they're going to face things that they're not prepared for. Maybe they're going to come up against comments or naysayers or other challenges that they might not be prepared for. But they are not going to go into a meeting blind without you giving them some context. So why do we start our interviews off this way? I'm not saying you have to tell them everything that they need to come to the interview prepared with, but why not set their best foot forward? You're still going to know if they're the right fit or not for you, and if they do well under pressure, or if they do well in a situation that's not comfortable for them. You will know that because you will be able to ask questions that get that information. So use that job advertisement to set the expectations early. So you're saying, here are the qualifications that are being sought, and here is what the expectations of the hiring process look like, with some feedback on what the manager expects them to speak to them about when they get to the interview. It's not a challenging concept. It's just foreign because it's not generally how we operate. We're trying to catch them off guard in some secretive way. That's not what this process is about. It's about gaining information to find out if they're the right hire for your team and your organization. Whether they're nervous, whether they can come up with an answer on the fly, doesn't help you. It doesn't. So if you want to find out, do they do well in stressful environments, or when there's naysayers, or when they come up against information that they don't know, we can talk about that. Can you provide me a time when you've been in a meeting and somebody caught you off guard with a request or a comment? How did you handle that? How did you deal with that experience? That is how you can better understand that. Again, they're not going to expect every question you ask, but by explaining to them how the hiring process works, you're setting expectations early. The other part is that it also provides a potential time commitment that's involved in an effective way. You said you're going to speak with a recruiter, you're going to speak with a hiring manager, you're potentially going to speak with a couple of employees on site. So that they understand this could be a multi-week process. This could be a multi-day process. So right there, they see the expectation early in your job advertisement. And if you notice, On that job advertisement, it did not say requires 2 years of experience. It does not say requires master's degree, or it does not have anything about education. Because, and I'll flip this back, unless your role is something like a doctor or a lawyer, that we as a society are requiring education, then consider if an education is really necessary for the role. I'll say, think about the people in your organization. For example, if I posted that customer service role, right? And I say, okay, we need somebody that has a bachelor's degree. Then I'm saying, or I better be saying, that the rest of the team internally all has at least a bachelor's degree. Because how dare I go out and post a role looking for somebody with a bachelor's degree if nobody else on the team has it? Why then am I thinking only that somebody with a bachelor's degree can be successful in the role? So look at the people in the role. Are you sort of building them outside of the criteria? Because if they are not fitting in the criteria of the role, then who are you building this role for? So the other thing is, if you're posting a job description with an endless list of bullet points for the candidates to have experience, and then are of the same belief that their resume should be only one page, how can they effectively share their experiences in those areas with you? So for example, if you have one of those lengthy job descriptions that I talked about earlier, right? And there's 10 bullet points under this category, and 10 bullet points under this category, and 10 bullet points under this category. Are you asking for the candidate to match all of those 30 bullet points 100% of the time? Because if that's the case, your talent pool is this big. Now your recruiting process is part of the problem. Or are you asking for them to have a percentage of this, right? So maybe you put next to the bullet points, this will be part of your role 20% of the time. This will be part of your role 5% of the time. Or we only need you to match the job description 25% or 50% or 75% or greater. Because candidates are thinking, I have to match this 100%. When in reality, nobody has every piece of criteria that you've put on your job description. And more importantly, again, you're saying we want a resume to be one page, which by the way is bogus. If somebody has 10 years of experience doing something, their resume should not be one page. So let's get that out of our head right away. Secondly, going back to that, you're saying your resume can only be one page, but I have 30 bullet points that I need you to prove you have experience with. How am I supposed to get across my expertise to you for these 30 bullet points if you only want me to fit it on a page? You're causing a problem in your own hiring process by creating these arbitrary rules. So again, by providing those expectations into the hiring manager's line of thinking, job seekers feel more prepared when coming to their interview and ultimately will demonstrate a better version of themselves. Again, maybe you want that on the spot pressure. Ask it for examples where they've problem solved in prior roles or life. You have the ability to provide a runway for the candidate to put their best foot forward. Not only will the job seeker appreciate this piece of the process by you setting expectations early, but they'll show you how well they can shine when they understand what you're asking of them. So you're not saying, here's a deck of cards, employee, figure out how to play the game. I'm just going to sit and watch you struggle. No, you're saying, here's the cards. Here are the basic rules. I'm an expert, but here are the rules. Now let's play. And I will do my best to help you navigate this process as we go through. You're not trying to trick them into giving an answer that's negative. You're going to understand that based on the ways that they answer your questions, if you're asking effective questions. Go into the interview allowing the candidates that you're interviewing to shine. If you are asking the right questions, you will get the answers that you need to make the best hiring decision possible. Update your process and set expectations early. And again, also with setting with the posting, right? As I said, why are these things in your job description? Did a CEO 10 years ago say that, okay, everybody had to have bachelor's degrees? I can tell you from experience that when I said to my hiring managers, I need you to go and update this job description, they update the first 3 bullet points and they move on and they send it back to me. They're not going through and updating the qualifications or the requirements, or they're using whatever the requirements are that are currently there because they think that that's what HR put, or they think that that's what's supposed to be there, rather than looking internally and saying, is this really necessary? And that's where that early meeting comes in to say, this is really not a necessary piece of this role. Let's take this part out of the job description, right? So you're having that conversation in that initial meeting I talked about where you're meeting with all the stakeholders. The other thing is that timing is everything. Timing is everything. Think about this. You put an applicant through an interview process. They go through the initial phone screen with the recruiter or HR, if there is HR recruiting in your organization. Then the recruiter sends them to the hiring manager. The hiring manager takes a week to review. The hiring manager then interviews them the middle of that next week. The hiring manager has 4 other interviews. So they're like, well, you want to wait and see, smorgasbord, right? We want to wait and see, not like, we love this candidate, they fit all of our criteria, let's just keep them moving. So they're like, let's wait and see. So then another week comes and goes. And then like, okay, now we want to move this person on. HR and recruiting goes to that candidate and they're either no longer available or they're already in final stages with somebody else. And now they're automatically pinning your opportunity against someone or something else. Move through the process quickly. If you've had that initial meeting with all of the stakeholders in your organization that are part of this role, there is no reason why you should not understand the expectations of the process. Sure, people go on vacation. Somebody might not be available, but who is your alternative, right? And that's where that meeting comes into play. We said, who are interviewers? Who are alternate interviewers? Just in case that person's not here or not available. When you are putting somebody through the process, you should be making an offer on the same day as the final interview. I would even go so far as to say, make it on site. Hand them an offer letter before they leave, or extend a verbal offer before they leave your building. Again, if you've already had a meeting with everybody on the team, that should be a very easy number to come up with, and it should not need any more approvals. So if HR can make, HR or whoever is responsible for hiring can make that offer before the candidate leaves, that shows how passionate you are about that individual and how much you really want them in your organization. If you can't make it before they leave, make it the day that they interview with you. Try to be that quickly. If that's not possible or feasible for whatever reason, have that offer come to them within 24 hours of that final interview. Again, if that initial meeting happened, then there's no need to do all the back and forth with your internal team. Offering that candidate the role in the spot or within 24 hours, you're showing that you're confident about the decisions that you make and that you value them and don't want to lose out on the potential to have them work for you. The other thing I've seen is that companies will say, okay, we're giving you this offer, but you have to answer us within 3 days, or you have to answer us within 24 hours because they know that they might be getting a counter from somebody else, right? So they're like, well, you have to respond within X amount of time. That can be seen as a red flag to job seekers. Why are you requiring me to make something so quickly? You're now holding me hostage saying this role expires on this day. 3 to 5 days is a sufficient amount of time. If they are interviewing and comparing you to other opportunities, which newsflash, they are, right? They're going to do that whether you give them a deadline or not. And setting the stage where we're going to hold you hostage before you're even an employee sets the wrong message. Because can you imagine what it's like when you don't get something and you're an employee? So even though you want an answer right away, give them time to make a decision. Remember that this impacts them, potentially their families, the lives of all of those people, maybe having to move. Maybe they're trying to transition out of their organization in a respectful way, and they need to give their employer more than 2 weeks notice. Maybe they want to round out a project because they've given so much time to it. Maybe they want to take a vacation in between, right? So let them have the time that they need to make a decision. If this is the right role for them, you want them to know that. You want them to have thought about it diligently and can come back and say with confidence, I want this role. I enjoy this company. I think I can bring great things to this team, right? That's what you want. You don't want people who don't want to be there. And by holding them hostage, that's not the right approach. Also, when you're doing these job descriptions, right, you also need to think about the candidate experience. So we talked about, making them feel like they're not being put on the spot and allowing them to have their resume parsed in and not having duplicative work, right? Things like that. But once you actually have applicants or individuals that are interested in your open position, give them the best candidate experience. Think about your customers, right? What would you do if you were trying to get this customer and then maintain this customer? And even when you convert this customer to a customer, you're still treating them with that kindness and respect. So that candidate experience doesn't end when they're no longer a candidate. It needs to move forward into that employee experience as well. If you do not provide the best candidate experience, I can almost guarantee you that those candidates are going to talk about that online with their friends, with their family, with their coworkers, right? They're going to talk about it. And it's not because they're drama filled. It's not because of any negative reason. It's because they are going to remember that negative process, right? Do you tell the stories about your bad dating experiences or your good ones? We're naturally programmed to remember those bad things more easily than we are our good ones, right? Emily Morash was just here last week, and she was talking about how we're emotional first. And we've had people talk about when you go on Yelp, right? How you're going to make a negative review before you are a positive review. It's the same thing in the job seeking community. Poor candidate experience will travel through the job seeking community faster than a positive one. But by providing positive ones, you're then creating people who see you in a positive light, potentially will come back to you for the future, or truly recommend you to other people. Even if it's not the right fit for them, that doesn't mean that the company wasn't good for them. Maybe they weren't ready to make a change. Maybe they have more that they want to do. Maybe they just don't feel like that opportunity was right for them. But they still want you to get somebody that's great because you treated them nicely and well, and you cared for them. So your hiring process is really essential. And you could be in your own way in terms of hiring talent. I encourage you to go out and purchase that ebook, The Secret Formula of Hiring Talent, that you thought it's not so secret, because a lot of the stuff I talked about is in there. But if you take nothing away from what I just said, or if you don't go and order that ebook, it's only $8.99, right? But if you don't go and order the ebook, look at your job descriptions. Are the expectations absolutely ridiculous? Does everybody internally meet the same criteria? Are the job descriptions long and unnecessary? Are the job advertisements long and unnecessary? If you had to apply to this role, whether it was from seeing the job posting all the way till the end of the process, would you make it through the process because you wanted to? Set expectations early by providing tips on what the hiring process looks like and what the candidate can expect from the hiring manager, how they can be better prepared coming to your interview. And finally, create the best candidate experience you possibly can, because you can't afford not to. If you need help with any of these things, from hiring process to candidate experience, job advertisements versus job descriptions, you can call me. We can talk it through, and I can talk about how I can help you with that project. Or I can just share it, and hear your concerns, right? And understand if there's something that I can offer to you in the meantime. As I end every podcast, I like to talk about the quote from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you did, people will forget what you said, but people will never forget how you made them feel. I have been very fortunate to have job seekers who have told me how they feel about my process and the way I was able to help them. As many of you may know, my job seeking services are free. I help job seekers build their resumes, mock interview, help with their LinkedIn profiles, right? I sort of serve as their personal HR person. And I can't tell you exactly what he said, but I had a recent job seeker that I was helping that posted something on on his own LinkedIn page and tagged me. And the words that he had said at the time made me feel incredible. He was so appreciative of the support I provided to him. I didn't place him in a role,
But he was one of multiple people who has said to me, I felt more confident in my job search. Something like, I felt more confident in my job search because you and I had conversations. The fact that that person felt compelled to go online and share those things made me feel incredible. It reminded me that I'm out here doing this because I wanted to help people. That was my goal. I wanted to help people. I wanted to help job seekers. And so I'm helping companies in order to help job seekers, but I also am helping job seekers. So I've had the opportunity to feel really great from helping people. And that's always been my goal, has been to always help people. If I can help you in any way, please let me know. But I remember how these people that have reviewed me in that way have made me feel. I don't remember their exact words. I don't remember exactly what they might have done, right? But I know that I felt good and that I felt joyful that I was able to help them in one part of their life. Lead with empathy, act with kindness. Have a great day, y'all.
Thank you for listening to All People Podcast. If you enjoyed our show, I'd love for you to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. The work doesn't end here. If you want to keep the conversation going, find me on LinkedIn or Facebook, or visit my website, apeoplepartnerllc.com. Lead with empathy and act with kindness. Have a great day.